Alright, welcome to lecture 2. So what we're going to talk about today is preference, which is a relatively theoretical topic because it's the foundation of all economic theories, at least in terms of mathematically. So we're not going to do the math. We're just going to introduce the concept. We don't actually need to touch on the math to see why it's useful and why sometimes it might not make too much sense. So preference. So preference represents what people want. That's what preference is, what you want. And in economics, preference is expressed as binary relationships. So it's not like, so in economics, preference is not whether you like something. It's whether you like something more than another thing. So in economics, preference is always a binary relationship, the relationship between two things. And we use this symbol, like that looks like greater, to represent preferred. So it's slightly curved, right? So it's not exactly the bigger or the larger symbol, but it's similar concept. So this symbol means preferred. For example, if apple is if your apple is preferred to banana, it means the individual in concern prefers one apple to one banana. So it's a relationship between two things. You prefer apple to banana. You might be indifferent, right? It could be indifferent. So there is also a relationship that tells you that it's at least as good as. So apple is at least as good as banana. So what does that mean? That means it could be better, it could be equal. And the symbol means indifference. The symbol, this curly line, means indifference. So in this case, if you have used this symbol, then apple is indifferent from banana. That means they're equally good. So strictly better, could be better, actually the same. Right? So that's what economics theory built upon. These relationships. They cover all cases, right? They cover all cases because so you either prefer something to another thing. You could be indifferent, or it could be better. So they cover all cases, and in economics, we assume that people can tell you what they like. So rationality. What is in your mind when you say someone is rational? So in Chinese is right, lazing, right? What do you mean? What comes up when you think that someone is rational, or someone rationally do something? What's in your mind?
Its performances come from a calculations.
All right. So performance. So it's a calculated decision, right? That's something you might think of, right? It's a calculated decision. What else? So my remote. Okay, here it is. What else? Anything else you can think of that you would consider rational?
Maybe unbiased?
Unbiased. Well, so I can see what you mean. Unbiased. So it's not affected by sort of personal bias, right? Some sort of impartial decision. Anything else? Now, I think these are actually very valid answers. This is probably what people have in mind when you say people make rational decisions. In economics, within the context of economics, when you say people are rational, we usually mean something very specific and much less than what you have in mind. That's within the confine of economic theory. Obviously, in day-to-day usage, what you just said would be what we usually mean by being rational. But within economic theory, rationality has a very specific meaning. And what the meaning is this. It consists of two things. One is for for every object A and B, a preference relationship exists between them. So the relationships that I just mentioned, do you prefer A to B? Might you prefer A to B, or is just A and B equal? These relationships. In rationality, in economic theory, says that you have to have one of those relationships. So either A is at least as good as B, or B is at least as good as A, or both. You can tell me something about two objects. What this says is that you either like apple over oranges or you don't. You should be able to tell me what you like. That's what it means. Behind all those mathematical symbols is the idea that you should be able to tell me what you like. Right? You are not allowed to say that you do not know. You can say that it's indifferent. You can say that I'm indifferent between the two, but you can't say I don't know. This is called completeness in economics because you have a complete relationship between all objects in concern. Right? So if I randomly pick two things, you should be able to tell me which one you like. Right? That's one. The second relationship is that if you like A more than B and you like B more than C, then you like A more than C. Right? If you like apples more than oranges and oranges more than grapes, then you like apple more than grapes. Sounds reasonable, right? This is called transitivity. So it's just the relationship between multiple objects. You should be able to traverse along, right? You like A more than B, you like B more than C, then naturally you like A more than C. These two requirements together is what economic theory means by rationality. Now, the reason why you have something like that is that basically what they give you is some sort of consistency, right? You won't suddenly switch. You can tell me what you like, so you don't switch between. Sometimes I like A more than B, sometimes I like B more than A. Right? Because you have one definite relationship. Either I like apples or I like oranges. You won't kind of switch back and forth. And you have some consistency in what you like because of transitivity. You like apples more than oranges, you like oranges more than grapes, then you like apples more than grapes. At least that's the idea. Now, that's a very ideal requirement. These are very ideal requirements. Do they make sense? First, completeness. If I really pick up two random objects, do you necessarily know which one you like? If I pick two things that you have never seen before, how do you tell me whether you like it or not? Right? Like if I just pick up two smartphones, right? One from Huawei and one from Xiaomi, and maybe you never used either of them, right? And they look pretty much the same. All phones look pretty much the same these days, right? Just big screens in the front. If you have never used that particular brand of a phone, and I do not allow you to go online and search for reviews, do you know which one you like? Probably you don't. So you probably have faced situations where you do not know what you want. And in that case, you are violating the requirement that you can tell me what you like. Some might argue that you can say, well, you could say indifferent. I mean, I'm not sure that you're actually indifferent. You probably would tell me, I don't know, right? You simply say, I don't know. But that would not satisfy what completeness wants from you, because you're supposed to know. You're supposed to know what you like, even for things you have not seen. That's not easy. That's one. What about the second one? The second one seems reasonable, right? But yes, for individual maybe, but it turns out that collective decisions often do not fulfill the transitivity requirement. It's actually very easy to show that it's violated in voting. Right? So what it says is that even if everyone is very consistent, you know what you like, you can list your preference in order. Like I like apples more than oranges. I like oranges more than grapes, and this is the order I like. If we vote for the best, if we vote for what we like collectively, would violate transitivity. So here's an example. It's as simple as you can get. You have 3 individuals voting for their preferred candidates, A, B, and C. Their preferences are: the first individual likes A more than B more and B more than C. The second individual likes B more than C and C more than A. And the third individual likes C more than A and A more than B. Okay, so they have different opinions. What happens if you ask them to vote in a 1-to-1 vote? Right. So let's try thinking about what happens. Right. Okay, A versus B. Who would win? Now we just could do it by majority vote. So I'm going to vote A versus B. So first individual prefers A to B, so that's 1 vote. The second individual prefers B to A, that's 1 vote for B. And the third individual prefers A to B, so that's 2 votes for A and 1 vote for B, right? Okay, that's fine. Right? What if we are voting B versus C? Which one would win? Individual 1 prefers B to C, so 1 vote for B. Second individual prefers B to C, so that's 2 votes for B, right? And then third individual prefers C to B, so that's 1 vote for C. So that's once again 2-to-1, and B wins. So far, nothing's wrong, right? Now C versus A. First individual prefers A to C, so 1 vote for A. Second individual prefers C to A, so 1 vote for C. And the third individual prefers C to A, so 2 votes for C. Okay. So now, can you tell me what does this group of people actually prefer the most? Do they like A over B? Yes. Do they like B over C? Yes. Do they like C over A? Yes. So even in a very simple setting, 3 people with different opinions, and then you already violate transitivity. There is no most preferred option in collective decision. You need to make very strong assumption, and in order to get a consistent preference in collective voting. Basically, if everyone has roughly the same opinion, then you would have consistency, right? You would have transitivity. If I think in the same way as you do, obviously we agree, right? But when you have vastly different opinion like that, then you don't have a most preferred option. And you see that the order of voting matters, because this type of 1-to-1, so in actual voting, right, you have many ways of voting. Do you do 1 round and the single candidate who gets the most vote would win? Now that's kind of the way it works in United States presidential races, right? You can have multiple candidates, but whoever gets the most vote basically wins. That's kind of the idea. Well, not exactly, because you have this electoral college idea thing, but basically, supposedly, you have the most electoral votes, then you win. Like simple hurdle. But in France, you have two rounds. If no one gets more than 50% in the first round, then the top 2 candidates enter into the second round, and then you have a runoff. It turns out that the way it works, the mechanism you use to vote would affect the outcome because of this reason. Now in this case, right? If we do this kind of runoff, and let's say in the first round you have like you have A versus B, and A wins, and in the second round you have A, then B is out, and you just have A and C. Then C would be the winner. But if in the first round you do B and C, then B would win, and in the second round you have A versus B, then A would win. So the mechanism is going to affect the outcome. And this is shown. This has been seen in actual elections. For example, in the U.S. presidential election, how many times? One to Obama, George W. Bush. Yeah, like the one where Al Gore went up for election. So that's right after Bill Clinton and before George W. Bush. And well, Al Gore was competing with George W. Bush. Now, in the election, you have Republican candidate George W. Bush. You have the Democratic candidate, Al Gore, and you have some minor parties like the Green Party. In the election, U.S. elections tend to be very it tends to be closely contested, and the outcome comes down to Florida, the election outcome of Florida, and it comes down to something like 1% of the vote, right, in one state of the United States, and Al Gore lost. Al Gore lost by like 1%. Interesting. Now, in that state, basically there's something around 2% of the people vote for the Green Party. Had those 2% of the vote gone for Al Gore would have won the presidential race. Right? If you ask the people who vote for the Green Party to vote again, given the outcome, they would probably vote for Al Gore, because for them, Green Party is the first choice, Democratic Party is the second choice, Republican Party is a distant third choice. They would not have chosen the Green Party if they know that would imply that the Republican Party would win. But the way the election is set up is that you have multiple parties, you have to vote for one of them all at the same time, right? Just once. There's just one round. And that would affect the outcome. If you have two rounds where you have a runoff, then Al Gore would have won. So is this something that is particular to one election system or another? Turns out no. The problem is very fundamental. Like the problem is fundamentally that when people have different opinion, there's no way you can satisfy them all. No election system can do that. You can actually systematically prove that. It has a name. It's called the Arrow's impossibility theorem. It's a very mathematically dense proof. But there's this idea, is that when fundamentally people have different opinions, there is no system, democratic or not, that you can satisfy all of them. Right? There's no way. Because their opinion is just so different. So that's also telling you why policies might be easier to implement in places where people are more homogeneous. So, like Scandinavian countries, where people are much more homogeneous than the United States, right? Or China, right? I think even if you have if you really have elections in China, Chinese as a society are much more homogeneous than the United States, right? So when people have same opinion, no problem. Everyone votes roughly in the same way. So you can use pretty much any system. But if you have like the United States, where you have really different opinions among people, then no system would be able to represent everyone, because they simply have two different opinions. So collective choices are not rational in the sense that there is no most preferred option. There's only outcomes that depends on the way the voting system works. Right. But for individuals, we usually allow ourselves to maintain these assumptions because we don't usually pick up two random items and ask people to choose, right? We don't do that. As economists, what do we study? We study people's choices, things that they have already chosen. Now, when you try to choose between things you do not know, you do research, you go online, look for reviews, you ask your friends, you try out the different smartphones in electronic stores, right? You form an opinion by doing research. Now, after you do research, it's fair to say you should be able to tell me your preference. So for economists, when you're studying things that you have chosen, then it's fair to assume that you can tell me what you like. Right? Similarly, I think it's quite reasonable to assume that for most of the things that you care about in your life, you won't have this circular relationship within yourself, because that would be a very weird scenario. If you truly have this circular preference, it would be very easy for someone to take advantage of you. So if you have an apple and I have an orange, let's say oh no, it should be that's the other way around, right? So if you have an apple and I have a grape, and you actually like grape more than apple, then I can give you the grape, you give me the apple, and maybe I can charge you some money for that. But then I know that you like oranges more than grapes, so then I can take an orange, give it to you, and you give me your grapes, and you might be willing to pay me something for that because you like oranges more than grapes. And then I know that you like apple more than oranges, so then I can take the apple you originally gave me, and then I'm going to exchange your grape back. I can exchange your orange back, perhaps for some money, because you like apple more than orange. If you actually have this circular preference, then it's very easy for someone to take advantage of you. So since we do not see people get taken advantage of like that in the real world, so I think it's fair to assume most people have a pretty clear-cut, linear preference. I like this more than that, I like that more than something else. You don't get this circular relationship. So it seems like it's okay if we are studying something you have already chosen. Right. A second thing that's very common in economics is the fact that we assume people like some of everything. Like in last week, we assumed that the farmer and the rancher likes meat and potatoes. No one likes to just eat one. We call it convex preference. It's just a name. It's just a name. It's convex because in the way that it would appear in diagrams. But it's just a name. It's called just convex preference, meaning you like some of everything. Do people actually have convex preference? I think it depends. Well, it's fair to say that in overall, in terms of what you have within you, right? I think it's fair to say you want some of every type. No one wants to spend all their money on clothes and not having a smartphone. And no one will spend all their money on smartphones and not having any shoes. So it seems it's fair to say in terms of broad categories, that's what you like, right? But is it the same as saying you necessarily want a mixture of two things within the same type? Like, let's say drinks. Do you want milk mixed with orange juice? At least not at the same time, right? So when you get to something that minor, it's kind of arguable whether you still want to say that you want the mixture, right? But in other cases, I think how much people like mixture might be more than you think. So now, anyone like Angry Birds or SpongeBob, right? Perhaps some of you do, right? So now, what convex preferences say is that we have this diagram where it represents what things you buy, right? This is the production possibility frontier from last time. You can spend all your money buying Angry Bird products, or you can spend all your money buying SpongeBob products. That's okay. If you like some of both, then you buy something in the middle. Now, a look at this. I found this in Hong Kong on a street market. What is that? It's a sponge bird, right? It's an angry bird in shape and SpongeBob in. You can find actually a lot of that in Hong Kong. That they obviously came from China, right? So I'm not sure who likes that, but you have very similar products like that. For example, you have Captain Minion, right? Captain America mixed with Minions. Obviously someone won that, otherwise no one would have produced that, right? So there must be some demand. So some people actually want SpongeBob and Angry Bird in the same product. There must be someone who likes that, right? So that's context preference. You want a mixture of two things, right? So that's context preference. So that's the basic assumption that in economics we have people. You can tell me what you like. You have consistency. You have this consistency in what you like, transitivity, and you like some of everything. That's the underlying assumption, pretty much in all economic theories. Right. So how do you go from preference to what we see a lot in economics? Numbers, formulas, diagrams. So let's say here what we have here is iPhone 4, iPhone 5, and iPhone 6. How do you tell which one is better? One way is the bigger is the better, right? I mean, obviously, iPhones have been growing in size, right? It's getting bigger and bigger. But another way is to say, well, this is called iPhone 4. The next one is called iPhone 5. And then the one after is called iPhone 6. 6 is better than 5. 5 is better than 4. That's kind of the idea. The number represents that it's something better. Now, what would be a really bad way of representing whether something is better? So take a look at HTC. So similar to iPhones, I've listed 3 generations of HTC phones. What were they called? The first one on the left. So it came out in 2013. The second one in the middle came out in 2014, and the third one came out in 2015, right? Basically, every phone manufacturer refreshed their phones once a year, just like iPhones. But why are iPhones called its phones with consecutive numbers 4, 5, 6? What did HTC do? The first one is called HTC One. The second one is still called HTC One, and the third one is still called HTC One. Now you know why HTC didn't do too well. It's just confusing. We keep using the same name, right? So now, fortunately, they abandoned that already. So they end up having to add a bracket in the back telling you which submodel it is, right? So it's HTC One bracket M8, HTC One bracket M9, HTC One bracket M10, and then by 11 they gave up. It's just called 11. So they don't want to call it 1 anymore. Right? So, but the idea is the bigger number usually people would feel it's better, right? So that's the same in economics. What we do is this. When we have one thing better than the other, we give it a bigger number. So that's the idea of utility. That's what it is. A numerical rank of preference. Bigger means better. There's nothing more than that. Bigger means better. So let's say you have iPhone 4, iPhone 5, iPhone 6. You could use 1, 2, and 3 to represent them. And since 3 is bigger than 2, 2 is bigger than 1, that means the iPhone 6 is the best. That's the whole idea of utility. It came from a time before economists started using calculus. Right? It's just a way to rank things. Actually, I would say it came before, it possibly came before anyone wanted to call themselves economists even. Right? So it's just a very simple idea. Rank things by numbers. Right? So economists, we use fancy function U to represent utility, but ultimately it just gives you a number. what the function does is simply give you a number that represents how preferred they are. 1, 2, 3. And because this is a rank, this is a rank, as we say, bigger the number the better. So number 3 is the best. So this is what the individual would choose if that's the 3 options they have. Ideally, utility should be ordinal. So only order matters. And that means that you can use any numbers as long as they are bigger for the better. Right? So instead of 1, 2, 3, what can you do? Well, you can use 2, 3, 5. Does it matter? No, because 5 is better than 3, 3 is better than 2. Same idea. That's the original concept of utility. Just give me a order, right? The higher number, the better. Nothing would have changed because the highest number is still the number for iPhone 6. So that's to say, nothing changed. In practice, however, since economists start dealing with more complicated problems and start using calculus, then utility is cardinal, especially when there's risk or uncertainty. So the actual utility value also matters. So these days, when you're dealing with utility functions in a course where you have to do math, it's not just that the order matters. The size, the magnitude of the utility also matters. Now, if it's all about order, then all we know is that 5 is bigger than 3, 3 is bigger than 2. How much better is the iPhone 5 versus iPhone 4? Well, no one knows. Well, I just know, because remember, we are where we came from is that I'm asking you, do you like the iPhone 4 or do you like the iPhone 5? And you tell me you like the iPhone 5. And so I assign a higher number. Right? I didn't ask you how much more you like iPhone 5 versus iPhone 4, right? I just asked you which one you like, and you tell me you like iPhone 5. In fact, I would say it's not necessarily a very reasonable question to ask you how much more you like iPhone 5 more than iPhone 4, because how do you express that notion? So how much more do you like iPhone 5 than iPhone 4? Do you tell me, oh, one iPhone 5 is equals to 2 iPhone 4? Is that the way I should express it? What's the point of having 2 iPhone 4s to begin with, right? Or do you tell me one iPhone 5 is equals to iPhone 4 plus 3 apples, right? Is that the way you express? So if you think about it, asking people how much more you like one thing than the other thing is not a simple question compared to asking them which one they like, right? So ideally, what you want is just what people want when you compare two options. But the practicality of doing math means that you actually enforce evasion. So in economics, whenever you see something, example like this, iPhone 5 has a utility of 3, iPhone 4 has a utility of 2. What ends up happening is that not only is iPhone 5 better than iPhone 4, iPhone 5 is actually 50% better than iPhone 4. It's 3 is 50% higher than 2, right? So in reality, when you deal with when you see the actual mathematics of utility in economics these days, the number would imply a ratio. iPhone 5 is 50% better than iPhone 4, and iPhone 6 would be 66% better than iPhone 5. That's what it is. But again, as I said, is it really reasonable to ask people to come up with such a number? I think it's actually quite hard. How much more do you like milk over orange juice? What am I supposed to tell you? Right? Like 30% more? Like, what does that mean? It's very hard to understand. Now, utility is usually stated as a mathematical function of relevant stuff. For example, we're going to show you some math, but it's going to be very simple math. Like, for example, you have a function, just u is a function. It takes in two inputs. The utility depends on iPhone and web. And in this example, I just said the function being wealth plus 5,000 times thousands. This is something that you see a lot, something like that you see a lot in economics, where the utility function depends on a handful of things. Typically not more than 3 or 4. Right? That's what you see in economics. Now, the relevant stuff here is item and wealth. Clearly, you all care more about just iPhones and wealth, right? In your life, you care a lot more things than just iPhones and wealth. Your well-being depends on what you eat, like whether you have friends, what you do. It certainly depends a lot more than just iPhones and your money. However, when we write down a relationship between your well-being and iPhones and money, we assume everything else is not related to the decision at hand. Right? It seems reasonable to say that when you're deciding whether to buy an iPhone, what you eat for dinner is probably not of consequence, right? If you're so cash constrained that buying an iPhone means you're not eating dinner, then probably you should reconsider whether you want an iPhone. I think for most people who get an iPhone, what you have for dinner is an independent decision. How much money you have is a relevant question because no money, no iPhone. So it seems reasonable to say, well, when you decide to buy an iPhone, the biggest concern is how many iPhones to get and how much money do you have. That's the reason why we can simplify. We think that these are the relevant factors. In economics, models are meant to be simple. This is the idea that I always want to reiterate because economic models are not meant for making predictions per se. Economic models are meant to explain what people do. Right? That's a very different objective from other fields like data mining or artificial intelligence, where you actually want to be as accurate as possible in mimicking what people do. Right? Here in economics, that's not the objective. Economic models very often have very bad predictive power if you want them to predict precisely what people do. It's good at explaining why people do something. Right? So we establish a model that only have iPhones and wealth because we think that the amount of wealth you have probably explains how many iPhones you want to get. If you have no money, then you don't get any iPhones. If you have more money, you get one. If you have a lot of money, maybe you get 2. Right? So economic models are simple because it's meant to explain things, not to predict people's behavior. Okay? There usually tends to be a trade-off between the two. Modern data mining and artificial intelligence models tend to be really good at predicting what people do. They can give you very accurate predictions, but the trade-off is that it's very often operating in a black box. No one knows why it works, but it just works. The way it works, the way that, for example, take AlphaGo as an example. AlphaGo is definitely the best Go player in the world. Right? AlphaGo is the best Go player in the world. No humans can beat it. Right now, no computers can beat it. So it's the best Go player in the world. It's a neural. It's constructed of what you call a neural network. So it's a computer model. How does it work inside? How does it actually figure out? What is it actually thinking when it wins? No one knows, right? What it does is the researchers set up a model. It set up the computer parameters. It gives it a lot of time and data to train. Just play. So it's like, okay, computer. This is a Go. This is Go. This is a game board. These are all the pieces. Go figure how to play it out. Right? These are the rules. Read it yourself. Computers. Now, if you ask humans to do that, it's not going to be very effective because it's going to take a lot of trial and error to figure out how to play Go if you're just reading from menu, right, without anyone teaching you. But for computers, that's okay, because computers have all the time they need, because computers are very fast. So AlphaGo can play millions of rounds in a day, right? So it's not hard. Oh, sure, I'm just going to play millions of times until I figure out how to play Go, and that's what AlphaGo does. But because there's no instruction involved, how did it come to learn to become the best player? It's kind of like sort of a black box. No one knows. It's just play against itself, and it just gets better, and then one day it's better than all of us, right? So models that predict very well might not tell you much about how to become the best Go player. So studying AlphaGo is not going to make you a better Go player, because it just plays in a way, and it can't explain what its logic is. It just plays very well. And that's not the objective in economics. We want to have models that actually tell us, give us insight of what people are doing. And to do that, it has to be simple. So one of my teachers used to say, we already have a complicated model of the world itself. That's not the point. The point is to simplify things so that we can understand what's going on. Right, so now we're just gonna, just one slide, we're gonna show the math of how utility works. Let's say you have wealth equals to 6,000 and iPhone costs 3,880. And in our case, I have 6,000 and iPhone costs 5,480. What would the math be like? What would it be like is you have to calculate the utility value if the individual buys the iPhone, which in this case, right, you see that there's he buys one iPhone, and his wealth goes from 6,000 to 6,000 minus 3,880 because he purchased the iPhone. So you substitute these numbers into the formula. So you have one iPhone, wealth becomes 6,000 minus 3,880. So 6,000 minus 3,880 corresponds to the wealth, right? Corresponds to the wealth. And this is one iPhone, right? And then you get the number 7,120. That represents how good it is. And then you calculate what happens if he doesn't buy an iPhone. Then no iPhone, 0, right? 0. And then he still has 6,000 wealth. So, oops, wrong color. So no iPhone, 6,000. Right? So he gets utility of 6,000. And higher number means better. So 7,120 times 6,000. So he's going to buy. That's the whole idea of utility. No matter how complicated you get in the theory, ultimately the formula gives you a number. The higher the number, the better. And that's how economists construct all their models. A function that gives you a number. The higher the number, that means that option is better. So now in this second example, the iPhone is more expensive. We expect the individual to be less enthusiastic about buying an iPhone. That's the realistic part, right? So similarly, you substitute numbers in. 6,000 minus 5,480 is the wealth because the iPhone is now more expensive. One iPhone here. So you end up having number 5,520. Not buying is the same as before because nothing happens. He's not spending any money. So this time around, because the iPhone is more expensive, it gives you a utility value that's lower than not buying. So not buying is better. Now this is the realistic part. What we're trying to do is to give you a formula that can explain why an individual would buy an iPhone when it's cheap and not buy an iPhone when it's expensive. That's the point. Right. And how with this form, so now it gives you a reasonable prediction. Can we explain what's happening? Yes, we can explain what's happening is $1 increase the utility value of 1. One iPhone increase the utility value of 5,000, right? So that means that if an iPhone is more expensive than $5,000, then it's not worthwhile. So that's the explanation. That's what the formula captures. Obviously, it might not be 5,000 for everyone, right? Someone might have 3,000, someone might have 6,000. But the idea is this captures the trade-off between money and iPhone. So that explains what's happening. No matter how high level you get in economics, ultimately it comes to something like that. A function that tells you the relationship between different items. Alright, so that's the math we're going to have today. No more math, pretty much. So, just one more. Now, one thing that's very interesting in economics is this. What happens if something costs more than the money you have? Can you still buy it? Now, you probably would say no, right? But if you do the math, so I forgot to type it in, but if you do the math, just the same as before, buy and not buying, you realize, so I'm just going to do it again. One iPhone, $3,000 minus 3,880, you would get 3,000 minus 3,880 plus 5,000 times 1 equals to 4,120, right? And you not buying with $3,000 just equals to 3,000 plus 5,000 times 0, so that's just 3,000. So actually the answer is the individual would buy the iPhone. All right. Okay. Is that realistic? It depends on what you think is realistic could realistically happen. Now, on one hand, it shows us there's a problem. Is that the function we have right here does not capture the fact that you could run out of money, right? It just tells you basically, if you look at this form, it tells you something very simple. One iPhone is the same as $5,000. So if the iPhone is cheaper than $5,000, then it's worthwhile. It doesn't actually have anything here that take into consideration whether you want to run out of money. Now that's something that might not be realistic. So in a more practical model, you might need to add in a constraint that says that you can't spend more than the money you have. Yes, that's something that's routinely being done. But the simple example doesn't have that. So you can spend more than you have. On the other hand, it turns out that something allowing you to spend more money than you have is a very common assumption in economics. Most economics model, I would say, actually allows you to do something like this. You can spend more money than you have. Why? There are two reasons. One is the real reason. The real reason is one fewer assumption makes fewer assumptions. The fewer assumptions you have, the easier the math is. So we don't really want to deal with the complexity of the math where you have more constraints, that we have to check whether you have enough money. That seems too troublesome. So economists just say, well, let's just forget about it and let people spend more money than they have. So simplicity of math is one reason. But there's also a realistic reason, is that in reality, you do have ways to spend more than you have, right? What's that called? That's called credit cards, right? That's called credit cards. That's what it is. You spend, and then you pay it back. Plenty of people spend money that they do not have. Do you know that in the United States, the typical household debt is $8,000? So the typical family in the United States would be in debt. They have spent more than they have. That's typical, right? So it's actually pretty reasonable if plenty of people do that. For companies in particular, very few companies start off with all their own money, right? A lot of companies start off by raising money from someone else, either from what you call angel investors, venture capitalists, or from family and friends. Many people start this business by borrowing money from someone else. So in some sense, they're doing something without the money. Yeah, but it's possible. If any, you can also borrow money from a bank. When you buy an apartment, especially in Hong Kong, very few people can afford to buy an apartment with cash in Hong Kong, or pretty much any developed countries, right? You always get a mortgage. But then if you're getting a mortgage, that means you're buying something that you do not have enough money for. That doesn't stop you from buying an apartment in Hong Kong, because there is a way for you to borrow money, right? So this is actually not that bad an assumption, turns out, because we all do that. We spend money that we don't have, right? Borrowing. So, but you'll see that in cases where you do think that people cannot borrow, then you would add in a budget constraint. That complicates the math. But it could be more realistic in some scenario. All right, so now, here's a question. Do you notice that so far, preference and utility are defined over amount of stuff you have, right? It's always about, do you like apple or oranges? Do you want an iPhone or more money, right? It's all about stuff. Do you want iPhone or more money? Do you want iPhone or money? Do you want apple or oranges? That's how it works. Is that really what matters? Is that really what matters? How the absolute amount of stuff. The more stuff you have, the more happy you are. That's kind of in some sense, that's kind of what we are implying here. The more stuff you have, the happier you are. Okay, so let's think about this question. Are you happy? Are you happy if you just earn $1,000? Probably, right? $1,000 is pretty good money, right? So probably, if nothing has changed, right, just suddenly have $1,000 more. But what if I tell you everyone else has earned $10,000 in the same amount of time as you have earned 1,000? Are you still happy? Probably not. If everyone around you earn $10,000 more and you're just earning $1,000, then that doesn't make you happy. That probably makes you feel bad. So this happens a lot when you start working. Do you get happy if you get a 2% raise? You're probably pretty happy if everyone else is getting nothing. But you're not going to be happy if everyone's getting 5% or 10% raise, right? So which is why salary raise is usually kept secret in workplace. No one likes to talk about how much money, how much raise it gets, right? Or no, and in fact, no one talks about the salary even, right? Because once you start talking about salary, you could make some people really sad knowing that they actually earn the least amount of all their colleagues, right? Now, what's happening here? Why would you feel bad if it turns out that you're earning less than those around you? Even though you do earn something, right? You're getting something extra. You still feel bad. What's happening? Let's look at the stock market. This is Hang Seng Index, the local stock market index. Hang Seng Index has been doing pretty well in the past year. So this is from Yahoo Finance. This is the return in the past year. 1 year ago, Hang Seng Index was 2,200 points, 2,700 points. Today, it's 22,700 points. Today, it's 31,600 points. So it's grown by almost 50. It's grown by 40%, right? It's grown by over 40%, I think. Yeah, 40%. Pretty good return, 40%. Return in 1 year. That's pretty good. Think about it. If you're actually bold enough to borrow money from a bank at something like even at 10% or 20% interest, you'll still be making a lot of money because the stock market has gone up by 40%, right? So now it makes you think of, I should invest, right? I should invest 40% in 1 year. How much more? This is the same diagram for Bitcoin. 1 year ago, Bitcoin was $872 US. Today, it's $13,500 US. That's like what? 1,600. Let's say one. That's on 1,800%. Yeah, I think that's about that's right. That's yeah. I think 1,000 about 100. Yeah. Right. 1,800% return in 1 year. It grew by almost 20 times. Suddenly, the stock market doesn't look all that lucrative, right? Now you should buy Bitcoin. Everyone knows they should buy Bitcoin these days. So if you put the two in the same diagram, that's what happens, right? 1,600. Yeah. Right. So the blue line is the Bitcoin return. The red line is the stock market return of Hong Kong. It barely registers. It almost looks like it's a flat line compared to Bitcoin return. Right. So New York Times has this article today. It was just today, I think, 2 days ago, Saturday. It's like, everyone is getting hilariously rich and you are not. And it's talking about Bitcoin, right? It's just people are getting ridiculous rich because of how fast Bitcoin has been going up, right? So it looks like whether something makes you happy depends a lot on what's happening around you. Some argue that preference and utility are defined over gains and loss of stuff. Whether you're happy over a particular change depends on what change are experienced by those around you. Right? A salary raise that is higher than your colleagues makes you happy. But a salary raise that is lower than colleagues might make you sad, even though it's a raise. Right? It's a raise. So if that's something that interests you, then these are the books that you might be interested in reading. Misbehaving by Richard Thaler and Luxury Fever by Robert Frank. I think you can probably find these books in the library if you want to. Misbehaving you would find on Kindle. Luxury Fever is probably an older book, so I'm not sure where you can still find it. But the idea is that in both cases, it's talking about, well, what people are looking for, what people are chasing after is not absolute gain. A lot of people are chasing a relative gain. Not only do I want more money, I want more money than my friends. I want more money than those around me. Right? And in some sense, that does make sense, right? Because a lot of times, think about it. Every one of us is living many times better than an Asian king, right? An Asian king wouldn't have flush toilet. An Asian king wouldn't have the same access to healthcare as we do, right? They certainly don't have the internet or smartphone. So we do live a lot better than any Asian king or queen, right? Right? But do you think we are happier than they are? I'm not so sure, right? Because even though we have so much, that's also the things that every one of us have, right? You almost take it for granted nowadays. It's kind of weird not to have a cell phone. So if that's what you're interested in, these two books are something you might be interested in reading, right? So